Identity is not something that exists in a solid state inside of your mind. Identity can better be thought of as a systemic process that each of us uniquely develops in order to keep our lives under control. A lot of it is couched in instinct, a lot of it is couched in experience. Where those things collide is where identity is formed. As we live in a complex society, though, our identities necessarily have to be formed with more than just raw instinct, as human instinct is not necessarily conducive to human society in and of itself. Society is something that we as humans have made an effort to build, and so identities that fit within society are something that each of us uniquely makes an effort to build along the way. Not necessarily intentionally all the time, but some of us really have to do it with intent to pull it off.
Saw Moon Knight, it's this new show on Disney Plus about having the dissociative identity disorder and also being a superhero, and I thought it was pretty good. Oscar Isaacs really gave the performance of a lifetime in that show. He was playing all these different characters and playing them all extremely well, really convincing and believable, and I really just felt like I could watch his performance, all day when I did, because it was 6 hours long. I watched the behind the scenes footage and I really appreciated how the actress who played Layla brought a lot to the character. She had her own suggestions about how it should go. It was a very strong character arc. Everything in the writing in the show was top notch. Now, I done seen lots of other stories that approach the subject of dissociative identity disorder, such as House of Leaves or Boogie Pop. And many of these stories might even touch on using the term and addressing it as an existing psychological condition, but are less interested in exploring the mechanics of how it actually functions and attempting to really be representative of a true-to-life experience akin to something that many have had. I think it speaks to our growing realizations, about therapy and all that. More people sort of telling their stories and all.
But if an identity is just a mechanism that each of us develops on our own, as a survival tactic, the limits of what our identity can actually do to propel our survival are something that we only learn as we experience life and are humbled to the extent of what we are capable of manifesting from our identity. Just now I started using second-person pronouns to refer to myself, you and we. This is something we all tend to lapse into, particularly when we think that the person that we're speaking to wouldn't have necessarily thought these things for themselves, and so we are trying to put them in the mind state of being someone who has experienced what we've experienced or would have thought what we've thought. When you tell a story, for instance, and you're describing what happens by telling someone, okay, so you walk in and you see this and you're blown away, you're actually describing what you did. So the story should be, I walked in, I saw the speakers, I was blown away. But that doesn't necessarily enrapture the audience in the same way. You want to suggest to them that they actually, contextually, are you in this situation. You're trying to take them out of their own identity and apply your identity to them in a way that they might find it more relatable, which is what I would call projection. When we express our identities to someone else, we are projecting to them the image that we want them to have of us, separate from how we may see ourselves.
I get made fun of sometimes because I act a little bit like a crazy person. Sometimes I act different ways in front of different people. Some people think that I'm like a parody, that like my whole existence is just a joke, that I just like made up this accent so that I could make fun of somebody. But it ain't nothing like that. This is just the way that I've always been. Been living in VA most of my life. That's 757.
When people are projecting a specific personality is when I think they are capable of being the most associated. That is to say, when your interactions are following a clear set of guidelines that you understand going in, then it's easy for you to remain in character because that character is well defined. You understand who you are supposed to be in this interaction, whether that's just exactly who you are in your own head, whether that's because you want to be that person or it's the only person you can be, or if there's something slightly different, something slightly ajar from what you think about or how you would present yourself in another situation. Most of us at least have some thoughts that don't get said out loud that are maybe a little bit different from the personality we're trying to project at whatever given moment. And depending on how many thoughts you have in your head, it might be really difficult to parse through that to actually select something that fits the context of your personality. However long this video is right now, I've been recording for 8 minutes and 45 seconds. That represents the limit of things that I have thought to say that are in character for Trixie the Golden Witch to say on microphone. The gaps in between those being times that I was thinking of other statements that didn't make sense to say in order in this video to tell the story I'm trying to tell in the character I'm trying to tell it with.
All I'm trying to say is that seeing somebody who was able to achieve that sort of mental harmony between the distinct cells that they possess inside of them, and then to actualize that into a superhero power to be able to fight against bad guys and protect himself because of the relationship that the different identities have inside of him, was a moving experience for someone like me who's experienced some of the same coming together of different fractured parts of my own psyche in order to, you know, be able to figure out how to create things that people like, that allows me to continue going on, you know, living and being able to exist. And so I thank all of you for that too.
Trixie the Golden Witch can best be thought of as a projection, a personality that was specifically crafted following a set of internal guidelines in order to create a certain effect to tell certain stories. She is your people, your equal, your writer. She is a simple Pied Piper, but only she gets to decide what she says on microphone. There might be a thought that occurs in my head which I think would be appropriate to express, but which doesn't get stated because Trixie wouldn't say that. And I have to continue waiting to find the words that Trixie would say before I can actually speak into the microphone. It might sound weird to suggest that I can't actually control what I'm saying with the complete deliberation where there's a voice in my head telling me, like, say this, you should say this, and then there's another force that kind of counteracts that and says, no, I don't think that's the right way to say it. We can find another way. To me, Trixie the Golden Witch is a collaboration. There's an emotional understanding that I have in my head of what I'm trying to say, and then there's a part of my brain that is able to translate those emotions into different words. But that stream of consciousness doesn't come out in such a way that it communicates a clear through line of narrative. I have to search through the cloud of different information coming into my head and string together sentences that sound like they go together one after another. But I couldn't figure out what those words were going to be until I turned on this microphone and started talking. I could have written a script for this section, but rather than that being Trixie's script, it would more so be the script that I wrote inside my head and then asked Trixie to perform. Because sometimes I say things, I read things that I've written that I feel like, oh man, I wouldn't just say this, but if I say it in a certain way, it might work. It might be in character for me. Or I'll change the way I, change the phrasing, change the way I say things, add in and subtract to make it more Trixie-like. And in a way, as a sort of defense mechanism, I can't turn it off when I'm on microphone or on camera as Trixie. If I had another character I was performing as, they might, behave differently. And I've, previously when I was doing the Digibro character, there was also the Artso Fartso character. And the distinction between them was just simply that I couldn't do those bits as Digibro. They weren't Digibro bits. They were Artso Fartso bits. I created that character to do bits that Digibro couldn't do because they didn't fit the narrative conception I had of what I was doing as that character.
Okay, well, I'm sort of new at this, so I'm going to leave it to somebody else from here. Thanks for listening to me. Piloting my friends like Gundams. Titan flows coming with the rumbles. Bundle up, cold flows approach. Slow your roll. Intuition, no inhibition. Split the difference. Interference. Inner vision on that Claritin clear. Wow, they have my brand. Now there's nothing to fear. I'm a queer Cassandra, Gemini, Schizo, Sailor Moon Knight in the moonlight. Bite like 40 foot-pounds of downforce to jaw up and put to work. Trying to learn to twerk, and yeah, I'm like 30 pounds over 100, 5'8", girly, dedicated. Bird is the word in my house. Art rivals intelligence and loves the spouse. I used to really struggle to get my mood under control. I had mood changes all throughout the day that would be totalizing to the extent that I cannot perform the tasks of one emotion when I'm in another emotional state, if that makes sense. This is very limiting to me, as I often wanted to be doing something that I just felt I couldn't, because I couldn't tap into whatever would allow me to do that. Something that my mentor told me was, you need to get these moods under control. You need to be able to perform when you need to perform. Found lots of different ways to trigger my mood to shift, to get me out of my emotions, to not wallow in an emotion, to challenge it when it arises. Ask myself, how necessary is this? Is this something you need to be thinking and feeling about right now? Can you move on? Is there something you need to be doing? To cut the emotions short and move them back. It's something that I think a lot of us have, we all have to learn to do this, to go to school, to go to work. If there's those days that your heart's really not in it, but you got to put yourself there. You got to use that extra brain power to get yourself into the place you need to be to get the job done. It can be really hard to figure out how to pressure yourself as an artist, to figure out how to even, what are the boundaries that you should have with yourself about handling your own emotions as an artist.
All of you have probably experienced dissociation and derealization on some level before. If you've ever been in your feelings, checked out, zoned out, not really paying attention to what's going on around you, these are all pretty close to the same thing. Derealization specifically is when you basically forget you exist. I've seen people get so immersed in stories they forget to breathe because they've just totally lost track of their own existence in getting so melted into the thing that they're empathizing with. Or just sitting in a scenery and kind of basking in all of the interactions happening around you, but not wanting to be participant in them. When you sort of just check yourself out as not part of the equation and just allow everything to happen around you. I don't think derealization is as common as dissociation, but dissociation is basically when your actions don't align with your identity and it causes you to check out in a way. So for instance, when I watch really bad anime that I don't like, it is hard for me to remain associated with what I am doing. And this is why it's always been such a struggle for me, and why I will drop shows so quickly, is because I have to make such a strong effort to parse what's happening if I don't emotionally connect to it right away. So if I watch something that constantly is, inviting me to think about it and to get more immersed into it, or even to just try to shut up my thoughts and just feel it for a minute, or indeed get so overwhelmed with feeling that I don't even know what to think. A good example of that might be The Wind Rises, a movie that, each time I've watched it, I've just been in tears for so many reasons that I can't put a pin on it. More relatable to a lot of you as a dissociative situation is probably being at the dinner table around your family when a conversation that you don't want to have to participate in comes up. You get lost in your own thoughts and feelings, and then you kind of check out of the conversation and drift away into whatever you're thinking about, and suddenly you aren't really picking up any of the visual or audio information around you. It just becomes this slurry of things that occasionally draws your attention when a keyword or something picks up, or maybe you stay taking in all the data but you're just not reacting to it and kind of, trying to keep tabs on two things at once. Some people are better at that than others, or have more will and desire to. Some people are afraid of checking out because it has a state of sort of unguarded comfort to it where it becomes harder to react to things. But putting all that distance between me and my emotions makes it very difficult to actually supply that emotional content back into what I do. You know, I try to really keep the valve kind of light, because when I go heavy into the emotional side of my content, it involves talking about identity and my own history and troubles with it and all these subjects that are difficult to broach in conversations about most media. But getting an excuse, so to speak, to really make something psychological and a little bit twisted in presentation because of the subject matter that I'm discussing, allows me to explore that bit of emotional content. So I'm always a little bit reliant on there sort of being a cultural Overton window that aligns with what I like innately find compelling to talk about, or stories that I want to present through this channel, like this one.
This club tattoo shirt is one of the many shirts that I got from my mom. Specifically, this belongs to Chester Bennington's clothing brand. He was operating in the years preceding his suicide. The first song on Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, Paper Cut. The lyrics are as follows. Why does it feel like night today? Something in here's not right today. Why am I so uptight today? Paranoia is all I've got left. I don't know what stressed me first or how the pressure was fed, but I know what it feels like to have a voice in the back of my head, like a face that I hold inside, a face that awaits when I close my eyes, a face that watches every time they lie, a face that laughs every time they fall and watches everything. So no doubt when it's time to sink or swim, the face inside is hearing me, right inside my skin. It's like I'm paranoid looking over my back. It's like a whirlwind inside of my head. It's like I can't stop what I'm hearing within. It's like the face inside is right beneath my skin. I know I've got a face in me. It points out all the mistakes to me. You've got a face on the inside too. Your paranoia is probably worse. I don't know what's in the universe, but I know what I can't stand is that everybody acts like the fact of the matter is I can't add up to what you can, but everybody has a face that they hold inside, a face that awaits when they close their eyes, a face that watches every time they lie, a face that laughs every time they fall, it watches everything. So no doubt when it's time to sink or swim, the face inside is watching you too, right inside your skin. The sun goes down. I feel the light betray me. The sun goes down. I feel the light betray me. It's like I'm paranoid, looking over my back. It's like a whirlwind inside of my head. It's like I can't stop what I'm hearing within. It's like the face inside is right beneath my skin. Chester didn't write those lyrics. He also didn't write One More Light. It was a song about a friend of the band who committed suicide. No, it was about a friend of the band who died of cancer. And then Chester's friend Chris Cornell killed himself. So he performed One More Light in honor of him. And about a month later, he killed himself. There was a point where I learned that Chester didn't write most of the lyrics. Mike Shinoda probably had a much bigger impact on me overall. I became a rapper. The voice that I sing with to myself. It's Chester's. It's my version of Chester's voice. I won't let that light go out.
Outside of playing Trixie the Golden Witch, I have spent a lot of my life in a dissociated state because I did not know how to react to any situation I found myself in growing up. I was raised in an environment where it was pretty much just me and my mom in an apartment consuming media together for the first couple years of my childhood. There was my little brother Victor was born when I was 1.5 years old, and for the most part it was still sort of just us. I don't really have a ton of memories of the first few years of my life. Eventually, my family toured the United States with Lollapalooza, with me and Victor in tow. We moved across country, and I grew up mostly in Virginia. And when I started school, I pretty quickly realized that every time I tried to interact with somebody, it just didn't really. I didn't know how to meet their. I quickly realized that I didn't know how to meet people's expectations in conversation. Just the kind of stuff that I had grown up talking to my mom about was different than the kind of stuff that other kids had grown up, talking to each other or their parents about. And I didn't know how to bridge those gaps. I just thought that everyone else was strange, and I didn't get why I seemed to have the biggest struggle of everyone, and it compounded over the years that I just got further and further away from a social understanding as I kept moving houses all the time and changing schools and just being in totally different environments and never figuring out how to adapt. What personality can I craft that will work in this environment beyond just being meek and quiet and keeping to myself? Because when I try to talk to people, it just puts distance between us. I've always struggled with these disconnects between what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing, and I've felt like I've had to put my emotions behind me for most of my life, so that's the more natural state to me than embracing emotion and pushing that forward. And so, the more guarded that I can be in my content, the safer I feel, even though, again, I want to be ultra explorative because that makes the most interesting and best stuff. And it's always how I've tried to run my career. It's what people, I think, expect from me at this point. I've always been a gonzo journalist. So, bringing the experience to you is part of the experience, but also if I indulge those feelings, I can get lost in them. I can get into a place where I can't create the content. Being in the state of mind that watching Moon Knight put me into made this a very difficult video to make because there are lots of different approaches that I could have taken, lots of things I wanted to say, and it was also fragmented and there's so many different moving parts to it that I felt like I don't even know if I have a character that can communicate some of what I want to say in this. So hopefully this is a robust enough experience that it's gratifying even to fans of Moon Knight who might have been expecting a more conventional review here. But honestly, the show is just really good. You can watch the behind the scenes making of to learn why it's really good. It talks, everybody who's talented is obviously talented who made it come to life. Oscar Isaac's incredible in the role. They did their research. They really tried to make something good, and they succeeded, and they had the backing to do it, and it's exciting to get to see. So, I don't have as much to say about why the show is good. I mean, mechanically, I could break down the writing like episode for episode, scene for scene, but basically what makes it so strong is just that the character is so well realized that I believed every step of the journey. I was with him. It was such a strong mystery. It doesn't give you information at all until like much later, and even then you learn very little. You only learn as much as you need to know to process the situation, so it leaves a lot open for the future. I really hope there's a second season because you could do a ton with these characters, and the third personality is introduced right at the end of the first season, so Trixie the Golden Witch is a character I know how to play with confidence in certain situations. There's other times where she's not appropriate to bring out, and I don't always know how to be a public persona without that. I'm not somebody who goes outside a lot or sees lots of people or is at a lot of events or public gatherings, often because of the fact that I struggle to meet all the different expectations of people's in those scenarios and maintain the same personality that maybe the situation takes me too far afield of something I know how to do in that system, and then my natural reactions might just be embarrassing or, change the way that people look at me. And granted, I can always recover from that and sort of explain myself, and I'm somebody who's embraced the cringe in a big way, sort of cringe my way upward. I really don't want to be cringe. I want to be accepted and normal and liked by people and seen as sort of good and, not shitty. And so I really am putting my effort into trying to realize an ability to do that as often as possible. So Trixie the Golden Witch, regardless of being pretty surly because I can't really help myself and pretty clumsy because I can't really help myself, is my honest-to-God attempt to be the closest thing to a cartoon superhero that I am capable of as a human being. That, I guess the last thing I want to comment on is that, it was very powerful to me, just as much as seeing the two personalities, the main ones, come together, to see them be undercut by this third instinctual force that, because of just how extreme the situation this character's found himself in, he's created another thing that supersedes the other two that they don't even know about. And that plays on fears that I have, as somebody who, I feel like when I experienced puberty, I sort of dissociated my emotional self into a different character that existed in my head that, was doing its own thing while I tried to command myself with the presence that's a little closer to Trixie, or Acid Girl, or, the logical, talkative part of my brain tried to be in control when my emotional side just couldn't. It just couldn't associate with my body because emotionally I didn't feel like I am the person that I appear to be, when I'm in front of people, or like a person that I could perform in front of people. My instinctual performance I wanted to give was just something I didn't think was appropriate, in a situation. So I just locked it up. And, all of my obsessions and all the weird things about my life really kind of stem from trying to get back to that emotional state, or find a way to bring more of it out and show more of it to the world. And, as I've aged, the bleed between the emotional, logical sides of my personality has, strengthened. So there is, again, a strong communication. I don't feel like two different people. I feel like a cohesive person that has collaborative elements. But I also understand that there is a defense mechanism part of me that kicks in sometimes that just ignores things people say that I don't want to hear, or that goes silent when asked a question that I don't know how to answer, or runs away, or won't run away. There's a side of me that says things I don't expect myself to say. And so that's the part that I fear. And I don't think I'm so dissociated that I'm waking up in the middle of the night as another person and doing shit I don't know about. But there's plenty of times where people tell me I said something and I don't remember saying it. Or people tell me that they said something to me, I don't remember hearing it. And maybe it's just because I was distant or dissociated at the time, but sometimes it's no, you literally reacted. You said yes. You had a response, but you weren't there. The person that I'm talking to right now wasn't there when that happened. So that's always a troubling feeling for me. You'll always have a reason to doubt me, because I'll always have a reason to doubt myself. But you probably feel the same way, don't you? I had a live stream recently where someone was asking if I intended to do voice training going forward at any point. And I answered that it's not that I can't do other voices, it's that this is the voice I know sounds good on a microphone. My voice is pretty androgynous as it is. I don't think that you necessarily have to assume that it's a male voice. I know most people are going to gravitate towards that, especially with the style of content that I do, but I also don't think that it's hard to imagine this as a feminine voice. Point being, though, that's my self-rationalization for why I feel comfortable doing the voice, but ultimately, the point is that it sounds good on the microphone. I know my microphone really well. I know how to sound good through it, especially when you get nice and close. And I can't summon other voices without having a clear purpose for what they're being used for. I can voice act. I've done it for different shows. Not a whole lot of them, because not a lot of people have really even attempted to get me to do it. I guess I haven't applied. But for instance, I played the character Meepad in the webtoon Inanimate Insanity for a while.
Take that, Meepad!
Sure. Consider it taken.
I love you!
Me phone appears to have malfunctioned.
Oh, no, you mean he's sick?
Toilet, the fate of Me phone's existence depends on us. We need to cure him now.
Yeah.
Toilet, listen. We're doing this to repair Me phone. You can partake as well. How about you go with the Grand Slams and I'll go with the bright lights?
And there are certain things that summon a natural, raw, emotional reaction out of me that brings out the most inner voice I have, which is childlike. It's not just that it's feminine, it's very childlike. And it came out of me on a stream recently. I'll give you a clip. I'll explain why this happened.
Moo! Oh, it's the cutest, it's so cow, it's the cute cow. Moo, 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 moo. Nobody told me there's gonna be cute cows.
I love seeing cows. Me and my husband drive across the country all the time to do fun stuff, and we see lots of cows. And when I see the cows, I tend to point at them and moo really cutely, I guess. And Bird really likes that, so he's always encouraged me to keep doing it. And so I've really processed this identity of when I see a cute cows, I gots to moo. And so I was playing Harvest Moon on stream, and I was looking at the chat, and then I turned back to the screen and realized that there's this huge adorable cow there, and I just let loose, and I immediately took a picture of it to send to Bird because I felt connected to him in that moment as opposed to what I was doing on the live stream. It's like I just had a strong emotional reaction that I normally wouldn't really show in front of people. It's not Trixie the Golden Witch who reacts that way. It's a more core part of me. Hey Bird, what do you call Cow Moon Night?
Night.
Thank you. All throughout my life, I've been obsessed with the duality of transformation and evolution. My first obsessions were Power Rangers, which is about transforming heroes, Beast Wars, which is a Transformers spin-off, Pokemon, which is about evolution, dinosaurs, which, were a stage of evolution. And my career has very much been defined by evolution, personal growth, and a evolving narrative of self and identity, of the ever-changing process and my extreme willingness to change the process by which I identify because I want to survive to the best of my ability. And what I view as the ultimate survival strategy is to be loved, to be someone that people want to keep around because they view you as essential to them in some way. And the most essential service that I think I'm capable of providing is being hyper-analytical, hyper-empathetic, and, having that desire to be helpful in any way I can, even though my actual personality is pretty standoffish and I'm difficult to reach when I'm not in character, when I'm not, when I'm not doing the bit. And when I respond to people on Twitter, I'm in character, I'm doing the bit. I'm, I don't really have an internet existence outside of Trixie the Golden Witch right now. And that used to be more so the case. There used to be sort of a little bit more of a disconnect between how I might talk to people online versus how I presented myself in the videos. But at this point, if it's on the internet, I want to be in character because I think the internet is a place, it's a stage, and you really need to be careful about everything you do and say there because it is inherently performative in that people are going to project onto everything you do and say. And there's a lot of different people projecting when you've got eyes on you. I think where my dissociative tendencies really started kicking into gear was just when people's reaction to me was to suggest that I should be someone that I'm not. And this began with me being told that I should be a girl. Growing up, I looked like a little girl, I dressed like a little girl, I acted like a little girl, and I just didn't identify with that because I thought of it as categorically untrue. I just am not, I don't have a girl's body, and therefore I'm not a girl. But because of the fact that that became a part of my identity, that I'm not a girl, it also required me to be very avoidant of anything that suggested to me that the opposite was true. And as the years went on, it was just more and more commonly suggested to me that the opposite was true, to the point that by the time I was like 9, I was wishing on a star that I could be a girl instead, because it just would have made more sense that way. But I never thought or had the lexicon to suggest that I could just identify as a woman. Just go along with what everyone's telling me and meet that expectation that society has from me based on how I look. Especially because what lies underneath is mostly informed by womanhood. My personality is based on my mom. That's the person who imprinted on me in those early years. My dad was in the Navy. He wasn't always around in the early years of my life, so I got all of my influence directly from my mom. And all of the big sister kind of energy I pour into the Trixie Golden Witch character comes from the fact that I have 2 younger brothers that I grew up with as the sort of central figures of my morality, is like that I have to help these kids grow up, basically. And I was not good at doing it. I was a manipulative cunt who used my brothers for my own machinations up until the point that I realized that that's like what a sociopath does. And, I had to be very careful once I got on the internet not to take advantage of people. I'm really glad that I didn't start to blow up on YouTube until I was like 22, because if it had happened when I was like 16, 17, I would have probably taken advantage of it in much more weird ways, much more explorative ways, if you will. But I was an adult, so I, was prepared for some of the responsibility, although mostly I just kept telling people, don't look up to me, I'm not a role model. If that doesn't work, it doesn't make people not look up to you or copy your mistakes. So now I actually try to be a real adult and take responsibility for what I do and, present a character that you can emulate, and I won't be mad at you for it. And that, I guess, is what I see in Moon Knight. A character who is heroic, who represents how dissociative identity disorder is not a curse, but can be a power, that the relationship you have with your inner self can, allow you to work together to create something that is able to, get something accomplished. In Moon Knight, the characters remain pretty distinct even in the final battles, but they bleed into each other in a way where you get the sense that their collaboration is what's making this possible, even if like one or the other has to take over the body for a given time. I couldn't say that there's like a personality I have that's in control of me when I'm playing Trixie the Golden Witch. Again, it is a collaborative experience. It's the different sides of me working together to generate something that, makes sense on microphone. And, seeing a character who is able to master their power and to be specifically to not just use the power to, to fulfill the goals of the Egyptian god, but to do it while upholding their own moral compass. That the reason that their identity became fractured in the first place was to be able to have morality in the circumstances that they found themselves in. And I find that pretty powerful. So, yeah, Trixie approves. Let's hear what someone else has to say.
Just like I grew up out of fear of my Queermo sexuality.
I think I'm losing it.
Real catch you are. You're bloody useless.
I can't tell the difference between life and dreams.